All right, so you know we moved the test a day. It's not tomorrow. It's going to be Wednesday. So today is kind of a shortish day because we have that Veterans Pep Day. Shout out to all the veterans out there, and especially to the ones that are not alive. Thank you for protecting our country. Otherwise, we'd all be speaking German right now. Okay, so right now, I would like to get into the math that's on this test. One of the main topics is order, the right order to do stuff in. So let's say I gave you this, y equals negative 3 parentheses x minus 4 squared plus 5. That would be like a baby level. 1, 2, 3, 4. Tell me, what order should this be done in? And you'd say like, okay, first you move it 5 to the left. You'd be totally wrong, but that's how you say it. Okay? Please do not work on other homework right now. Work on this. Only this. Delete paper. I got a pencil. You need one? There you go. Mm-hmm. Okay, first thing, I always have you start on the inside. And this one, it's really, like I said, it's a baby level one because there's nothing else to do on the inside except that. So it's right for, what's often tricky is that the stuff on the inside has to be in opposite of normal order. But since there's only one thing, super easy. Then you move to the outside, and these have to be next because they're multiplies, both of them, and they're separate things. That 3, I would always stretch before I flip, but you do not have to. They can actually be reversed. But I'm going to start with a vertical stretch factor 3. Notice if I had done a shrink, I would not have used a factor of 3. If it had been a shrink, I would have been using a what? 1/3. Okay, good. On the third thing, which is the reflection, that is not a flip. Technically, it's a reflection, and it goes across this axis like that. So if it's up, down, it's going across which axis? The x. So this is a reflect over x, and then the last thing you'd have to say is right 4. No, wait. Up 5. If you said a vertical reflection, I would have to accept it because there's only one way to do a vertical reflection, that is up and down, and I would have to accept that. Okay. I'm going to give you a hard one now. Same idea, but this is definitely much more challenging. Y equals negative 4 parentheses 2x plus 5 parentheses squared minus 7. There's 5 things now, and the inside can be tricky, so be careful. I'm going to pause while you try that one. This one was definitely tougher. Start on the inside, and of these two, what's normally first, the 2 or the 5? The 2 is normally first because it's multiply. Multiply comes before add normally, but we do the 5 because it's in the opposite of normal order when you're on the inside. So that should be left 5. Next one is the 2, and that is not twice as wide. It is half as wide, but if you wrote that, you'd still not get credit because it's too folksy. You have to use the real math words. Is this horizontal or vertical? Horizontal. Remember HIVO? Horizontal on the inside, vertical on the outside. So horizontal on the inside. This is a horizontal stretch or shrink? Horizontal shrink. And it's a factor of what? Yep, you always use a fraction if you're doing a shrink. In the old days, I used to accept both, but we're tightening up on this. We're all becoming the same, and the math teachers are agreeing that if it's ever a shrink, it needs to be a number less than 1. And if it's ever a stretch, then you should be giving a factor of bigger than 1. Like there's one on your homework that's like this. Is that a stretch or a shrink? It's a stretch, and you should therefore use what factor? 4/3. A stretch factor 4/3. In other words, it's 1 1/3 the size that it is now. Okay, so you have to use if you have to use a fraction for a stretch, make sure that the top is bigger than the bottom. So stretches have to be a number bigger than 1. Shrinks have to be a fraction smaller than 1. Okay, moving on to the third thing. Now we have to move to the outside. And on the outside, I would recommend you stretch before you flip. And so the stretch would be a vertical stretch factor 4. And then the flip is a reflection. It's a reflection over, it's an up-down flip. It's a reflection over the x-axis. F over x. And then the last thing, number 5, is the down 7. This is an important part. There's a lot of little questions on this on the test. Do you have any questions about this topic? Okay. Generally, it seems like you're understanding these. If I gave you the directions, could you make the equation? Let's say I wanted a parabola that was going to move up 6 and be 1/2 as wide and move right 4. See if you can write me an equation for that. It's like I gave you the steps, the 1, 2, 3, 4. You have to give me the equation. All right. So I hope you said y equals, first of all, it's an x squared. And then it's a matter of what's been done to the x squared. It has been moved up 6. That's a plus 6 on the outside. Half is wide. And if I put a 1/2 in here, that would be a very common mistake. Why shouldn't it be a half? What should it be? A 2. Because it's counterintuitive. If you want something to be a half on the inside, you got to use a 2. And the last thing is right 4, minus 4. There we go. Any questions about that one? All right. Next, let's say that I had, let me think. You know, I think I'm done with that kind of. You guys don't seem that interested. You seem like you understand those pretty well. So let's go to the word problems. That's where the hard questions are. All right. They have just had a ruling in New Jersey, which I thought was kind of interesting. It went to the Supreme Court there. It was about funeral operators had a corner on the market for caskets, and all of a sudden these monks started making caskets and selling them, and people really liked them because they were high quality wood, they looked pretty and everything, but they were only like $1,000 compared to a regular casket, which is like $3,000 if you go to the funeral home. Well, the funeral home people didn't like that, of course, because it's taken away a market for them. I mean, they make a lot of money on those caskets. So they said, well, you have to be an expert to make a casket. And the state, they finally decided to rule that these guys, these monks, should be allowed to make them, that it wasn't that much extra skill needed to make a good casket. And so basically you can sell anything to bury the person in. So that made it interesting. Now people can be buried in a simple wooden box if they want to be. And in fact, in certain situations, depends on the cemetery, I think you can even use like a cardboard box if you want to. So there's even a new trend towards people just wrapping the body in like cloth, you know, just like fabric. All right. Well, anyway, this coffin that we're going to make is going to be a cardboard one. And you're going to make it 7 feet, which would be how many inches, by the way? 7 times what? 7 times 12, can you do that in your head? What is it? 84 inches long. And the width, let's go with about 5 feet wide. So what would that be? 60, okay? And then to make this thing fold up into an actual box, we're going to cut out the corners of it. That one went tragically wrong. I'm going to fix that one. All right, now the question would simply say, write the formula for the volume in terms of the height. Well, the height's going to be this little distance, because once you fold it up on these little dotted lines I'm making here, do you get that that's the height? I hope we can get that that's the height. And then this is the same, and that's the same, and that's the same, same. So what's the volume in terms of the height? In other words, in terms of x. So your V should have an answer that's only got x's in it. Give it a shot. I'll pause for a second while you try. Okay, so from here, you should have said it's the volume, pure formula, volume equals length times width times height. Did I ask you to do the volume? I hope I did. Okay, good. In terms of just the height, that means that I can't have this V and this, or this W and this L. So I'm going to say empty spot times height. And then what is the length? Well, it's not 84 anymore. It's 84 what? 84 minus 2x. And the other side? 60 minus 2x. That's really hard to read. I'm going to try that again. 84 minus 2x and 60 minus 2x. And then this height is just an x. If you left that in there as an h, I would cry a little bit, but mark it wrong. You need to have one variable in your answers.
Do we have to have the x in a parenthesis?
No, that last x does not have to be in a parentheses because there's nothing else with it. Single numbers don't need parentheses, technically. Okay, how many of you had that one right? Raise your hand if you did. Okay, awesome. Let's talk about circles. And sometimes the hardest problems are simplest ones. So if I said my circle's perimeter is 3 times the radius. The circle's perimeter is 3 times the radius. I want you to give me the circumference in terms of the radius. The circle's perimeter is 3 times the radius. So this distance around the outside of my circle is 3 times the radius. Start by drawing a picture and label it. There we go. Maybe even throw in the radius itself. Then, get a pure form of the formula. And what formula do you know that involves diameter? So the diameter in terms of, what did I said circumference, sorry. Circumference formula. Sorry, not the diameter formula. Circumference formula. What's the circumference? 2 pi r, or, well, you know what the other circumference formula is? Circumference equals pi times diameter. That is the circumference in terms of diameter. Done. Doesn't it just have a d in it? Did I ask for it in terms of the radius? Did I ask for it in terms of diameter? Okay, circumference in terms of radius. So then I got to finish this and go, I got to replace this diameter with something, but why not just use that formula? Circumference in terms of radius would just be that. Isn't that the circumference? In terms of, doesn't it just have an r in it? That's it. Okay, so sometimes it can be really confusing because it's really easy. All right, let's do another one like that. Okay, this time I'm going to say, what's the area of this circle in terms of the circumference? The area of the circle in terms of circumference. If I were you, I would always go down to the bottom and say, okay, area in terms of circumference. So it's got a C in the answer. See, it'll always look like that. If you know what you're aiming for, you're trying to get the area, then that helps you to know what formulas start with and everything. If you know what the answer kind of looks like, area in terms of circumference. So area of a circle is pi r squared, right? Can I leave it that way? No, that's area in terms of what? Radius. So I got to get that r out of there. So what do I know about radius? In this circle, what's the radius? Or sorry, yeah, what's the radius? Radius is r. If I can't just put an r in here, I'd have that problem I had in the first place. So I got to put something in there that's got c's in it. Do you know how? Is there any formula that relates circumference? Circumference is 2 pi r. All right. So then, I'm trying to find an r to put in here. What's r? I got to divide by 2 pi. And then these cancel, and I have a radius is c over 2 pi. So, do you get I could put c over 2 pi in here? Is that the area with a c in it? Kind of like I wanted here, see? Okay, and then there's one last step. If I wanted to, the circumference is equal to 3r's, so you could put a 3r right there if you wanted to for the c. But then I'd be back to area in terms of what? Radius, and that's not what I really wanted. So I don't know what I'd do if a kid put 3r right there, because 3r is the circumference. But I think that would be wrong, because then their answer's got an r in it, and it's not supposed to. It's supposed to have a c. So it should have been like that. All right, let's do another problem. Let's say this time it's a right circular cylinder. All that means is it's standing up like a soup can. If it wasn't a right circular cylinder, it would be like tilted like this, a cylinder that's kind of going at an angle, and that's not what I want. I want a right circular cylinder. All right. So what formula do you know about this thing? The surface area would be the area of the bases plus the side. I don't think you'd be expected to know the surface area formula. I know it. It's 2 pi r squared plus 2 pi r h, but you guys probably wouldn't know that one. But what formula would you know about this one? Volume. Volume would be what? Kind of, except what's the base? Which is pi r squared, and then height. There we go. So would they ask you for volume in terms of two things? No, but they might say, what's the volume in terms of just the height? Well, I haven't told you enough info yet. I've given you the pure form of the formula we're going to use. What I'm going to tell you about the cylinder is that this cylinder is 4 times taller than it is wide. Label your picture. It's 4 times taller than it is wide. Now see if you can get this thing in terms of the height. Volume in terms of height. Volume equals blah, blah, blah with an h in it. That's what you're looking for, so. All right, if it's 4 times taller than it is wide, then the base here, the width of that, is the diameter. I'm going to use d. You could have used x, that'd be fine. And then this would be 4x, and if I'm going to use 4d. Now, it's an important part. If I put this in for radius, volume equals radius. I'm running out of battery here. Okay, here's the problem that we were working on. And we had figured out that it would be easier to understand if we redid our cylinder like this. We said it was 4 times this bigger this way. So another way to write that is that it's 1/4 as big this way. So then we took half of that for the radius, because the radius would be half of this. distance, and like from here to here. And then half of the 1/4 is 1/8, so the 1/8 h goes right there. That was a tough one. We won't have anything that tough. Now I'm going to do a couple problems with you from your packet, and so I'm going to pause for a second while I hand those out. All right, so here we go. We are doing problems 1A and C, so circle A and C in the problem 1 area. 1A and 1C. Flip the page. We're going to also do 2A and C. For now, we're skipping B and D because that's going to be tomorrow's homework. Then we're also going to, from there, do the evens. Problem 4, 6, 8, 10. 10 is a toughie. It is doable, but not easy. Okay, the very first problem, 1A. That's just in order from, I would recommend the inside out. But remember, when it's the final someday, Mrs. Richens allows outside in, or encourages that, I think, on her keys. So you might, if you're looking for a multiple choice answer that's right, remember outside in also works. But the inside, when you're in there, it always has to be counterintuitive, backwards of the way you would think. So on A, if you start on the inside, what's that plus 5 do? Left 5. What's the next thing we do on the outside? Vertical stretch, factor 2. Very good. And I would have accepted that. I'd recommend the word factor if you wanted to really do it right. But and number 3 is the 7, and that's down 7. Okay, those are easy. Let's move on to the word problems kind. So let's flip the page and go to problem 4. Swimming pool's 4 feet more than twice its width. We're only talking about the perimeter of this pool anyway, so you don't need to draw it three-dimensional to get the depth, because they're not going to ask you about that. So it's 4 feet more than twice its width. What I'd go is, that's width, and the hard part's the other one. How do I write that? Very good. 4 more than twice the width. That's it. This is an easy problem, but that's the hardest part of it. And now it's just equations for the perimeter of the swimming pool. What's the pure form of this formula? Always start with the pure form. 2 L's plus 2 W's. Then, plug in what they tell you. They didn't tell us the perimeter, did they? No, if they did, by the way, on one of the future problems, they are going to. If they're going to say, like, the area of the ant, and you'll have to put it right there. If they had told you the perimeter is 400, you'd put it in. All right, but they didn't, so I leave it. And then it's 2 somethings plus 2 somethings. But I need to know which one I'm allowed to have. Am I allowed to have width in my answer, or height, or length? Which one? Width. So I'm going to leave the W in there. The L has to be replaced. So, 2W plus 4. It's a really simple one. You guys wouldn't have... So, when we were first learning this. We have